Back. In this class, we're going to be talking about basic SQL commands. In the previous class, we installed a MySQL server, and I would advise you to go through that class again. We installed MySQL server. We also installed MySQL workbench. And when we installed MySQL workbench, we clicked on this plus icon to add a new connection to our local MySQL server. That is the MySQL server that we downloaded on this computer. So it will be the one you also downloaded on your own computer. We said the host address for anything on your local machine or your local computer is 127.0.0.1. And if you are connecting to another MySQL server that was downloaded on another computer, you need to ask that the owner of the server, let's say it's on a hosting platform or a cloud provider, you need to ask for the IP address. So it will no longer be 127.0.0.1, but a real IP that you can connect to, and then you would have access to that MySQL database. And once you have access, you can go ahead to create a database, create table, insert data inside the table, and do a lot of data manipulation. Now that we have MySQL Workbench, what if we do not have? How do we still interact with MySQL server? Normally, to interact with MySQL server without MySQL Workbench, you would be using a terminal like this on your computer. And you might want to ask on Mac, for example, to go to the terminal. You can go to your applications folder and then search for terminal. For example, you'd see your terminal on your desktop if you're on a Mac. So I have my terminal here, and then let's begin. There are a few basic SQL commands that you need to know. To connect to MySQL, you need to use the MySQL command, which goes thus. Something like this: MySQL -u, then the username. Remember when we were installing our MySQL, the username was a root user we had, then -p. Now, when you insert this on your terminal, when you type this on your terminal, it's going to ask you, it's going to prompt you for your password. So let's type this first and see. Another thing worthy of note or worthy of mention is that this terminal that you have here is also provided by MySQL Workbench. So even if you don't want to use your terminal at all, you can always click your connection and then just click on this new. I'm waiting for the tooltip to show. Okay, create a new SQL tab for executing queries. So if you click on this, you can have access to this terminal and type in your queries like you do on a normal either Mac or Windows terminal. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll run it on this terminal here, and once in a while I would always come back here. If you're running on MySQL Workbench, you don't need to connect with this connection string or with this command again, because you already did that connection here when you clicked on this plus icon. But if you're on the terminal, you don't have a connection yet, and you need to first of all connect to that MySQL server. It's just more like you want to enter a house and you need to insert the key into the keyhole, turn it, and then unlock the doorknob. It's exactly the same thing you're doing here when you're trying to use this command with your root username and password to log into MySQL. So let's go. MySQL-u, remember, root user, -p, you press enter. It asks you for password. During installation, we use the password, and that's the password I'm typing now. It will not show whatever you type on the screen because, yes, it's meant to be secure. I press enter. Can you see? Now it says, welcome to the MySQL monitor. Everything that we did using MySQL Workbench here, we can as well do writing just code on this terminal. So these are the basic SQL commands that we have, and we're going to be taking them one by one in this class. The first thing we need to do, just like we have here, take note. We have a DB. Let's start again from my workbench. I'm going to drop this schema. So we're going to start afresh. The first thing I would have done here, if I want to start saving data, you know, maybe I'm working on an application where I need to receive data from data of all the students and their marks in a particular course. The first thing I need to do is to create a database. Normally, what we would do here, for example, is to create a new schema, or what you would normally call a database. It's actually called a schema, and it's a school database. It's a school application we are building. So the database we are going to be using, let's name it similar to that. Let's call it school. That's the school schema. Let's just add underscore db, but it's not compulsory. You could have just used school. So I click on apply. Now take note, this is creating a schema called school db, and we want to create a database. So let's go. Instead of doing it manually here, let's close it. We're not going to do it here. We're going to do create. Come here, create just what you have here, database, and let's call it school underscore db. Please take note that create database and create schema are the same thing. This could also have been create schema. They are both the same thing. Create schema or create database. So create database school underscore db, and then always learn to terminate your SQL commands with a semicolon. There we go. Can you see query? Okay, one row affected. Now, how do we view this? That is why we have my SQL workbench. We can both view it here. We can see view on our terminal. So let's go. Now, when you reload, take note. See where I'm reloading. When you reload your schemas here, schema just talks about all the databases you have created. When you reload it, you find that school underscore db is now here. We did not create it from my SQL workbench. We created it from the terminal. Another thing we could do is to view all our databases. So to view all the databases we have, we can do show databases. Remember to terminate your query with a semicolon. Now, these databases have already been in the system except for school underscore db. So let us create another database again. Let's just call it cars underscore db. And then if we go to show our databases again, you now see that you have cars underscore db as one of the databases, school underscore db as one of the databases. Go back to my SQL workbench, also do a reload here. You now have cars underscore db, school underscore db. So easily you can create, do the same functions or the same commands that you would have done manually with MySQL Workbench directly on your terminal. Let's create one more database, then we're going to delete them. Create database. Instead of create database, let's do create schema and see if it's the same thing. Create schema, users. It's not compulsory to put underscore db, so let's do this without an underscore. Create schema users. Now we've created another database, show databases. We now have cars db. Oh, so yes, we have cars underscore db, we have school underscore db, and we have users. If you reload here also, cars underscore db, school underscore db, users. So we have successfully created a database. Remember, a schema is a synonym for database. Let's go ahead and drop the database before we use one of them. Let's just drop one. So because your database now has a name, you can easily associate it with that name and drop it. So we are dropping database. We are moving to this. Take note. Drop database. We have done create database. So drop database. Which of the databases should we drop now? Let's drop users. Drop database users. Terminate your command or your instruction with a semicolon. You press enter. Query OK. The moment you see query OK, that means there's no problem with the query that you wrote. And then show databases this time around. What happens? We no longer have the users DB here. Come back to my SQL Workbench, reload. Users DB is gone. I'd also just love to delete the cars DB as I'm not using it, and I don't want to forget it here. Cars underscore DB. Okay, show databases again. Just we are left with school underscore DB. So now, for us to do every other command like create table, alter table, we need to choose a default database. It's very important. And this is where the use comes in. You must tell MySQL which database you want to use. It is after you've decided which database you want to use that you can decide to create a table inside the database. Remember that tables reside inside the database. Tables cannot just exist. So you could have a database that is this big. Remember the picture of our database. Sorry, I'm so poor with drawing. Then inside this database like this, you now have different tables. One will contain users. This is the school database. School database contains students. All students will be in this table. I don't know if it's making sense now. Teachers, classes, everything that can be grouped together will be in a table. Subject, and then you remember we said that your table can be in this format. You have columns, remember, and rows. Sorry, so poor drawing this. Let me go again. A table and a row, and then columns. This one could be serial number. Let's say this is the student table inside the database. Serial number, name, age, class, mark. You remember. So now let's proceed. Having said this, let's proceed to use a database and create a table inside it. We come back here and we say use school underscore DB. Terminate your expression with a semicolon, and database has been changed. Can you see? Now that database has been changed, you can proceed to create a table inside this database. One of the tables we will be creating inside this database is the students table. How do you create a table? This is the syntax for creating a table. You use the create table statement, and then the name of the table. You have a bracket, and then just look at this, the name of the column and the data type that it should take in. Look at this. This is the table. So we have how many columns here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Serial number, you expect it to take in number. So the data type you should be expecting here should be what? Integer. Remember in our last class we talked about data types in MySQL. We said for numbers we use int, that is integer. For strings we use varchar, variable character, and we decide how many characters can be inside. And then we have the date type. Those are the most important data types in MySQL. In case you have forgotten, I can do a quick recap. We have int data type, MySQL data types. We have number 1, we have int for numbers. You remember numbers. we have varchar, and we say the varchar would have a character limit, in a bracket. For example, you could say 50. That means you're expecting 50 character is a string with a character limit. Then you say you could have a date type. These are the most important data types in 1995/06/02. These are the most important data types in MySQL. So when you are creating a table, you are telling the table the column name and the data type it should expect. You could still also say if it is a foreign key and you want it to auto increment. Now let's proceed to create our first table. We'll now say create table. The name of the table will be students because we're in the school DB. Create table, students, what are we expecting? All the column names and their data type. We're expecting serial number, right? Let's just say registration number. What's our data type? Space integer, right? Comma, can you see? I'm using a comma just like this. Column 2 will be, what else? We need the name of the student. We need it to be a variable character. And it should take in, I'm sure no name goes beyond 100 characters. We also need name, we need date of birth, let's call it DOB. It should be a date type, right? We also need a class, that is the class where the student is. Varchar, class cannot be more than 10. Lastly, we need the position in class. If it's the first, if it's the last, and that's also varchar. Let's say 200 characters. When you are done with all the column names, always just visualize a table that has row and column. When you are done with all the column names, terminate your expression with a semicolon and press enter. So we have an error. Let's check what our error is. We did not close the bracket we used. So let us go back and close our bracket and run again. Remember, there is an opening bracket here. There should also be a closing bracket. So let's run again and then we are fine. Now we have a table called students inside our school DB database. Let's go to our MySQL workbench. Let's do a reload. When you check your school DB, you would see tables. In the tables, expand it to the left, you will see that there is now a student table inside tables. And when you right click on this table, or when you click on this table, you can see all the columns available. Can you see? You have reg number, name, date of birth, class, and position. Now you've created a table that can store all the students' data. Let's also create a similar table that can store teachers' data. Let's just create a few other tables like this. We want to create table. Let's call, from this diagram we have here, we know we should also have subject table. Okay, let's create a subject table. So we'll go create table. Let's do this together, guys. Create table. Subjects, and then open brackets, subject ID. We have subject ID. It will also be an integer, comma, subject name, varchar 100. Let's just use varchar 100 for now. The name of the subject, comma, what else? The name of the teacher taking the subject, teacher, also a varchar, virtual 100. What else should be in the subjects table? Subject ID, name of the subject, the teacher taking, and pass mark. Yeah, pass mark. Pass mark should be voucher 200. Then don't forget this time we're closing our bracket and terminating this expression with a semicolon. Enter. Now we also have another table. If you come back here to reload and check your students table, and check your tables, you realize you now have students and subject. We also have another container, or what we call a table, where we can store data for students. Let's assume that, oh, we made a mistake. For this subject, we also need to add, what other thing can we add to class subject? The class taking the subject, right? Now, that means we already have this table for subjects, but there is a problem. Or let's create one more teacher. Let's create one more table. Let's go ahead. Let's create a table. Create table. Let's call it teachers. And then we didn't know the things to expect when we created teacher. So the only thing we have is teacher ID, which is an integer, and then the name of the teacher, which is a variable character that can take in 200 characters. That's the limit. We have this. Now we have a teacher table. Later we now remembered, oh, this teacher is meant to be taking a particular class. So what we want to do next is to alter that particular table. And that takes us to this next command, alter table. So when you want to alter a table, you can add a column, or you can drop a column, or you can rename a column. Okay, so let's go. To alter the teachers table, we use the alter table command. Alter table teachers, right? And when you see, there are three things you could do. The table name, we've already done that. You could add a column to the table, you could drop a column, you could rename a column. So let's add another column. We already have a teacher ID and name. Let's have the class that the teacher takes. So add table teachers. Add, the next keyword here is add column. Then the column name. Hold on, please. Add. What's the column name? We have a teacher ID name. Let's have the class, and then class space the data type. Class should also be a string, so we say variable character 100, and then we terminate our expression with a semicolon. Now we have added class as a column to our teachers table. Let's go and check here. Now, if you see, we now have teacher ID, name, and class. To our teacher, let's still ask, let's still add age. Oh, do we have age? Okay, we already have date of birth for our students. Let's add age. We want to know our teacher's age. We'll go again. We do another alter table, teachers table, add a column, call the column age, and then let it be a variable character again. We now have this. You reload, and you have class and age. Let's assume that we made a mistake in our table for subjects or for students, and we want to remove position. We don't want class position yet for the students. We can come here and alter table for students. This time around, instead of the add keyword, we're going to use the remove keyword. So alter table students, remove. What are we removing from students? Let's remove the position column. Position, remove position, that's all. Sorry, to remove, we are meant to use drop. Yeah, I noticed something was off. To remove that column, sorry, we'd use drop. So we are dropping the position column and then bam. When we check, you would see that your student table no longer has a column for position. You can see all the columns that your table would have here. The last thing we want to do is let's rename DOB to date of birth, because maybe the next developer does not understand what we mean by DOB. For my SQL, please note it's not just rename, it's rename column. So we're going to have this alter table students, rename column, then the name of the column and what you're changing it to. Okay, perfect. Now let's check what we have here. Now we have date of birth. For our teacher, for our teacher table, if you observe, we have age as a string. What if we want age to now be a number? We can still use the alter table, what's it called? The alter table command to do that. Okay, I think we need to get the right syntax for, what's it called? For my SQL. There's a bit of change here. Please, let's take note of this. We are altering table. The table name here would be teachers. Then we'll use the change keyword. The old column name would be age, because we are changing the age column. And then the new column name, we still want it to be age. The only thing we want to change is the data type. We want it to now be an integer. Let's see if this would run. Okay, perfect. So there are a few changes or differences for different variants of SQL databases. For example, for MySQL, I think you might need to check online for what command would fit what you're trying to do when it comes to altering the table. There are a few differences here and there between MS SQL, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and the different database or SQL database variants that we have. So now when you check, when you reload here and you check your teachers table, now you see that your age column is now an int. Beautiful. The next thing we want to do is we want to insert into that table that we just created. Let's insert a few data inside which is smallest, the teacher table. So we'll go, we'll use the insert into. Now take note, please take note of this. We'll use the insert into table name, and then the number of columns you choose here, you'd also place in values that are representative of each of those columns. So if you have column 1, column 2, we expect you to have value 1, value 2. In this example, we have column 1, column 2, column 3, then we would have value 1, value 2, value 3. So let's go back to our terminal and insert into. Take note, what's the name of the table? Teachers. Insert into teachers, and then what are the columns we have? Teacher ID, name, class, and age. We have 4 columns. So I have teacher ID, comma, name, class, and age. Name, comma, class, comma, age. I close this bracket and then I say values. So I'm inserting these values into those columns. Say values, open bracket, teacher ID, let me just say I1, or name is Femi, class is X, is teaching class X, and his age is 32. I close this, terminate my expression or statement with a semicolon, and I press enter. Now, there is a problem because Femi is meant to be a string. Remember, it's variable character. And for strings, you need to put them in quotes. So let's proceed to put our string in quotes. Femi is in quotes. The class is in quotes, X. And the age, is it an integer? Is an integer, so it does not need to be in quotes. We come here again and we press enter. We should have a very good response. That is, the query is okay. When you check, you reload here. You check your teachers table now. How do you check your table on MySQL Workbench? Remember, you right click the table and you select rows. Now when you check, you would see that it has been updated with Femi, who teaches class X, whose age is 32. Let's add a few more details. Let's see if we can add 10 rows. We only have one row now, so we go again. This time around, we change this to Damilare is taking front end. His age is 35. We go again. Let's have Juliet. She's taking nursing and she's 28. Let's also have Flourish, who is taking primary 4 and is 21. Now we should have had 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's have one more teacher. Let's have teacher Glory, who is taking nursery 2 and she's just 17. Now when you check your workbench and you reload, you select this again to run this command again. Now you will get to this select command, but for now leave it as it is. When you right click and you select one, the first 1000 rows limited to 10, or the first 10 rows, it will show all the data here. But why you're not seeing any data here is because the last time we ran this query, we only had one teacher. But now that we have 5 teachers, you need to reload what you have so that you have the recent data coming up. Now you can see that we now have Femi, Damilare, Juliet, Flourish, and Glory as the new teachers we added. Now that we have inserted, can we update the data in the database? Now, if you observe, you realize that we could create a table. We could update the table definition, like the columns and the data type, the name of the column and the data type. Same way you can now create data inside the table, that's insert data inside the table. You can also update the data inside the table. So, but before updating the data inside the table, let's use our select statement and stop selecting from SQL Workbench, because that's the essence of wanting to use the terminal. Let's select from that data table, from the table, the data we have just inserted. So the command to use is the select and the from keyword. So we go, you select the number of columns you want to view, just the same way you inserted using the number of columns. The number of columns you want to view, the table and the table name. So we go, we have select how many columns. Let's just check teacher ID. Select teacher ID, comma name, and comma age. We just need the so you decide what you need. There are times you don't need all the information in a table. You just need specific information. Then you'd use this select column names statement. When you do this, there's a problem. Just hold on. We selected, but we did not decide which table we are selecting from. Select column from teachers table, teachers, and then now it has given us a modified table just showing the columns that we need. this is what you would see. So even without MySQL Workbench, you could have selected or viewed the data you had in your database table. Now that we can select, if you want to select all the columns, there's what we call a wildcard. Instead of, imagine that you have a very large table that has 50 columns. Are you going to be typing in all the columns one by one? We have what we call a wildcard. The moment you use a star, you have told the MySQL server to select all the columns and return all the data to you. Now, see the difference between select and you are specifying column names and select star. Select column names will just return the column names. Select star will return all the columns available. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to update this data. When we update, then we'll check again. We'll update, we'll check again. Now, let's update a column and a value. So we go update. What's the table name? What's the table we want to update? Teachers. Then we would set, take note of the keywords. The update is a keyword, the set is a keyword. We want to set the name. You can see that the name here is Femi. Now take note. We want to set the name. That is the column called name. Where are we? Update. Set column name will be equal to, instead of Femi, we want to make it, we made a mistake. It should have been Oluwafemi. Take note. Set column name is a string, Oluwafemi. Where, take note of the next keyword, the where condition. Now, you use this where to decide which of the rows this update should affect. You say where, oh, we made a mistake here. We used the same teacher ID. Can you see? So we would correct all of this. Let's first of all change this name. Where age is equal to 32. Age is equal to 32. Terminate your statement with a semicolon and run. Now, if you select, take note, select star from teachers, you realize that oh, I said where age is 21, sorry. Oh my word. Can you see this? Where age is 21, so it went ahead to update Flourish to Oluwafemi, but that's fine. Let's now change all the teacher ID because all the teachers cannot have the same ID. So let's go, let's set teacher ID. Let's set teacher ID to be equal to 2, where the name is Damilare. Are you taking note of this? Their name is Damilare. Now, we have set our teacher ID to be 2 now for Damilare. Let's do the same for Juliet. Where name is Juliet, let's set the teacher ID to 3. Because all the teachers cannot have the same ID, it will be hard to locate them in school. Let's select again. Now we have 1, 2, 3, Femi, Damilare, Juliet. For Oluwafemi, we can use where age is equal to 21. Let's set teacher ID to be 4. That's for Oluwafemi, and you see that it's only Oluwafemi that has age 24. I will still make it a bit complex where we will have the same where clause. You now see what happens, that the updates will affect every row that has that where clause. Okay, let's select again. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's change for Glory to 5. Update teacher ID to 5. Where age is 17. Now we have successfully updated all the teacher IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's update Femi and Damilare's age to 32. So let us update age, right? Age will now be equal to 32. We want to update age is equal to 32 for Damilare. We say where name is equal to Damilare. What happens here? Remember, it's a string. What happens here is that we now have, if you select start from teachers, we now have Femi and Damilare, their ages are 2. Now, because their ages are 2, see what happens. If I update their class, update the teachers table, set class is equal to backend. Now they are taking backend classes where the age is 32. Look at what happens. Because Femi and Damilare's ages are 32, this update statement will affect both of them. Take note, we want to set the class to backend. For Femi and Damilare, we said where age is 32. And because their ages are both 32, what happens to them is that there will be an update on both rows. Let's go. Now, you can see query is okay and 2 rows have been affected. Now, when you do a select, you would realize that Femi and Damilare now take backend classes. That is that about updating data that has been saved inside your database table. Let's delete data from a database. And lastly, we are going to be dropping a table. So to delete data from a database, you use the delete keyword. Use the delete from keyword rather. Teachers. You are deleting from a table, take note. Delete from table, and then you use a condition. It is the condition that tells the server or the MySQL engine where to locate the data to remove. Same with the update. So we go to where teacher ID is equal to 4. Now when you do a select, teacher with ID 4 is gone. Lastly, let's drop this table. Drop table. This is so painful. I already have enough data, so I don't want to drop the teacher table. Let me drop the subject table. Take note when you are using the drop table or the drop database commands. If you do a drop database, every table that you have created would be deleted forever. If you do the drop table, if you use the drop table command, every data inside the selected table will be deleted forever. So you use these two commands with caution. Drop table and the table name. That's all. The table name we have here is subject. So we go and we drop table subject. Now that is gone. If you reload here, you realize that subject is no longer part of your tables. To show the list of all your tables in your database, you could use the show tables command. You have students and teachers in your school DB. Hold on, please permit me to describe a table. Describe students, teachers. Yes, you use the describe statement. So I'm adding 2 statements here for you, 2 commands that was not part of this. We have the show tables, and then we also have the describe table name. So when you look at this, when you do describe teachers, it will show you each of the column as a row this time around with the data type it's expecting, whether it is null. I would explain nullable fields, indexes, primary keys, foreign keys in the next class, and the default value if you have. Thank you and have a great day.